You are there, kneeling in your room at 2 in the morning, with tears falling on the cold floor. Once again you prayed for that answer, that door, that healing, that relationship. And the silence seems deafening. Lord, how long? You whisper, your voice breaking. Everyone around me is receiving blessings, everyone is moving forward, and here I am, stuck in the same place for months, years. Maybe you've thought that God has forgotten you, that He doesn't see your needs, that maybe your faith isn't enough. Today, I want you to understand a truth that will completely transform your perspective on this season of waiting you are experiencing. God is not late, He has not forgotten you, and this wait is not a waste. It is the most sacred process of character formation. Waiting builds character, and God has the best for you at the perfect time. If you have come this far tired of waiting, questioning God's timing, you are in the right place. This channel exists to bring you messages that build your faith, prayers that strengthen your soul, and devotionals that transform lives. Here, your faith finds direction and your heart finds peace in times of waiting. Subscribe now and turn on the bell, because our mission is to remind you that God is working even when you can't see Him. Today you will discover 8 powerful biblical truths about how God uses waiting to develop your character and prepare you for blessings you can't even imagine. These are not just words of comfort, but revelations that will renew your patience and rekindle the flame of expectation in your heart. We will culminate with the most glorious truth about God's timing that can change your life forever. Tell me in the comments, how long have you been waiting for that answer from God? What has been testing your patience the most lately? Share with me because your story may be the encouragement someone needs today. 8. Waiting reveals what is really in your heart. Few realize it, but waiting is like a spiritual X-ray that shows exactly what is inside us. When the Israelites left Egypt, God could have taken them directly to the promised land in a few days, but He chose a 40-year journey through the desert. It wasn't because God didn't know the fastest way, but because He needed to reveal what was in the hearts of His people. In the desert, far from distractions and abundance, it became clear who truly trusted God and who still had their heart in Egypt. Hunger revealed whether they sought God or only His provisions. Thirst showed whether they cried out to the Lord or murmured against Him. Each day of waiting was an opportunity for true character to be exposed. Many failed the test of waiting, but some, like Joshua and Caleb, proved that their faith was genuine even in the longest moments of uncertainty. Remember the whole journey on which the Lord your God has led you in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble you and to test you, to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep His commandments or not. Deuteronomy 8 verse 2. God uses waiting not to punish us, but to know us deeply and for us to know ourselves. In waiting, we discover whether our faith is based on blessings or on God Himself. During your wait, examine your heart honestly. Ask, Lord, what is this wait revealing about me? Where do I still need to grow? Use this time for prayer and self-examination, not just asking for the answer, but asking to be molded into the character of Christ. You will develop spiritual self-knowledge and emotional maturity, learning to trust God regardless of circumstances. 7. Waiting teaches total dependence on God. In our fast-paced culture, waiting forces us to learn a lesson we don't want to learn: absolute dependence on the Lord. Hannah was a woman who knew the pain of waiting deeply. Year after year, she went up to the temple seeing other women with their children in their arms, while her womb remained closed. Peninnah, Elkanah's other wife, constantly taunted her, reminding her of her barrenness. Hannah could have rebelled, she could have sought human solutions, she could have given up on God. But waiting taught her something precious. She learned to pour out her soul before the Lord in a way she might never have done if the answer had come quickly. She went so far as to make a tremendous vow, promising to dedicate her son to the Lord if He would open her womb. Waiting brought her to a level of dependence and surrender that transformed not only her life but the history of Israel through Samuel. But she prayed to the Lord with bitterness in her soul and wept bitterly. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will look on the misery of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life. 1 Samuel 1 verses 10 to 11. Hannah discovered that waiting was not abandonment by God, but the process by which he was preparing her to receive something much greater than she had asked for. Her total dependence resulted in Samuel, one of the greatest prophets of Israel. Stop trying to force doors and answers in your time. Use the waiting to develop a deeper prayer life. Declare, "Lord, I depend totally on you, not just for the answer but for the strength to wait." Learn to worship in the waiting, not just in the receiving. Your prayer life will deepen, and you will experience an intimacy with God that is only possible through total dependence. 6. Waiting builds unshakable perseverance. There is a quality of character that can only be developed in waiting. Perseverance that never gives up. Job lost everything in a single day. His children, his possessions, his health, and entered a season of agonizing waiting for God's answers. For months, he sat in ashes, covered with sores, questioning why he had to suffer so much. His friends came with easy answers and empty accusations. His wife told him to curse God and die. But Job chose to wait, even when he didn't understand, even when everything seemed lost. He spoke words that echo through the centuries. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." The wait was not easy. Job questioned, cried out, even cursed the day he was born. But he did not give up waiting on God. And that perseverance in waiting is what enabled him to receive double for all he had lost. Behold, we count those blessed who have suffered. You have heard of the patience of Job, and you have seen the end of the Lord, for the Lord is very merciful and compassionate. James 5 verse 11. Job's perseverance in waiting became an example for all generations. God saw his persistence in trusting even without understanding, and this resulted in a glorious restoration. When temptation to give up comes, remember Job. Declare, "Even though I don't understand, even though it takes time, I will persevere, waiting on the Lord." Develop the habit of worshiping even in painful waiting. Create milestones of faith that remind you of God's faithfulness. You will develop an unshakable perseverance that will sustain you in all areas of life, becoming someone who does not give up on God's purposes. 5. Waiting produces genuine humility. One of the most precious lessons of waiting is how it breaks our pride and teaches us true humility before God. Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful king on earth, accustomed to having everything he wanted when he wanted it. God gave him prophetic dreams, and Daniel interpreted them, showing that all kingdoms would pass away, but the kingdom of God would remain forever. However, the king's pride grew, and he refused to acknowledge that God was above him. So God put him in a season of forced waiting, 7 years living like an animal in the field, until he recognized that the Most High has dominion over the kingdoms of men. During those 7 years of waiting and humiliation, Nebuchadnezzar finally learned what position and power could not teach him: genuine humility before the eternal God. When he was restored, he was no longer the same man. The weight had broken his pride and formed a humble heart within him. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, exalt, and glorify the King of heaven, because all his works are true, and his ways are just, and he is able to humble those who walk in pride. Daniel 4 verse 37. The weight humbled Nebuchadnezzar in a way that all his wealth and power could not. He learned that God can humble those who walk in pride, and that humiliation was the path to his true greatness. Use your season of waiting to examine whether there are areas of pride in your heart. Pray, "Lord, may this wait teach me humility." Break any pride that hinders my intimacy with you. Practice serving others while you wait for your own blessings. You will develop genuine humility that will attract God's grace into your life. For God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. 4. Waiting deepens your intimacy with God. There is a level of intimacy with God that is only achieved through long seasons of silent waiting. David spent years in caves, fleeing from Saul, waiting for the promise of kingship to be fulfilled. During that time, far from the spotlight and royal pomp, something extraordinary happened. David developed an intimacy with God that would become the model for all future worship. It was in the caves, in the lonely moments of waiting, that he wrote some of the most beautiful psalms in the Bible. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. This thirst for God was not born in the palace, but in waiting. It was not in coronation, but in exile. David learned that God's presence was more precious than any earthly throne. Waiting taught him to value fellowship with the Father above any human achievement. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Psalm 16 verse 11. David discovered that true satisfaction was not in the fulfillment of the promise, but in the presence of the one who made the promise. Waiting led him to an intimacy that was worth more than any crown. Turn your waiting into a school of intimacy with God. Instead of just asking, learn to simply be in the Lord's presence. Set aside time for worship without requests, just cultivating relationship. Declare, Lord, may I know you more deeply during this waiting period. You will discover that knowing God is more precious than receiving anything from Him, and that intimacy will become your greatest source of joy. 3. Waiting develops compassion for others. One of the most beautiful things about waiting is how it makes us more sensitive to the pain and needs of others. Paul asked God 3 times to remove his thorn in the flesh, but the answer was, "My grace is sufficient for you." Paul had to learn to live with that limitation, waiting for the healing that did not come in the way he expected. During that painful wait, something beautiful happened. Paul developed a deep compassion for the weak, the suffering, and those with limitations. He wrote, "Who is weak and I am not weak? Who is offended and I am not indignant?" His own wait for relief made him extremely sensitive to the pain of others. He learned to comfort others with the same comfort he received from God in his wait. If Paul had been healed immediately, he might never have developed the compassion that made him one of the greatest comforters in Christian history. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. 2 Corinthians 1 verses 3-4. Paul understood that his waiting and consolation were not just for him, but to enable him to minister to others. As you wait, look around you. Who else is going through difficult seasons? Use your experience of waiting to encourage others. Pray, Lord, use my waiting to make me an instrument of comfort to others. Be intentional about ministering hope to those who are discouraged. Your waiting will gain greater purpose when you realize that it enables you to be a channel of blessing to others who are going through similar valleys. 2. Waiting purifies your motivations. There is a process of purification that only happens in the fire of prolonged waiting, the purification of the motives of the heart. Abraham waited 25 years for the promise of a son. During that time, he tried to help God through Hagar, sought human solutions, and questioned whether he had understood the promise correctly. But the waiting did a deep work in his heart. At first, Abraham may have wanted a son for natural reasons, to continue his lineage, to have an heir, to fulfill social expectations. But 25 years of waiting purified his motives. When Isaac was finally born, Abraham wanted him not only as an heir, but as the fulfillment of God's promise. And when God asked for Isaac back on Mount Moriah, Abraham was willing to give him up because his motives had been completely purified. He no longer loved the blessing. He loved the God of the blessing. The wait had transformed his heart from selfish to worshipful. By faith, Abraham offered up Isaac when he was tested. Yes, he who received the promises offered up his only begotten son. When he was told, "In Isaac your offspring will be called," he considered God powerful enough to raise him from the dead. Hebrews 11 verses 17-19. Abraham reached the point where his motivation was no longer to have a son, but to honor God. Waiting completely purified his motives. During your waiting, constantly examine your motives. Ask, "Lord, why do I want this? Is it for my glory or for yours? Is it out of real need or because of comparison with others?" Allow the waiting to purify your desires until you want the blessings for the right reasons. When your motivations are purified, you will receive God's blessings with a grateful heart and use them for His glory, not for selfish satisfaction. 1. Waiting prepares you for greater blessings. Revelation 1. There is a truth about waiting that few Christians fully understand, but it can revolutionize your perspective on God's timing. Waiting is not God withholding His blessings. It is God preparing you for blessings greater than you could ever imagine. Joseph spent 13 years waiting, from the dream in his teenage years to becoming governor of Egypt. 13 years that included betrayal by his brothers, slavery in Potiphar's house, unjust imprisonment, and being forgotten by the cupbearer. Each year of waiting seemed like an eternity, each day a proof that perhaps God had forgotten him. But God was not delayed. He was preparing Joseph for something much greater than ruling over his brothers, as the original dream had shown. God was preparing him to save entire nations from famine. If Joseph had become a leader at age 17, with the natural arrogance of youth, he would have destroyed his family and his people. The wait developed in him wisdom, maturity, compassion, forgiveness, qualities essential for someone who would rule over Egypt and save Israel. When he finally came to power, Joseph did not say, "Finally, my revenge." He said, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Waiting had transformed a young dreamer into a man of impeccable character. By faith, Joseph, when he was about to die, made mention of the exodus of the children of Israel and gave orders concerning his bones. Hebrews 11 verse 22. Joseph understood that even his entire life was only part of God's much larger plan. Waiting taught him to see beyond his own needs and to work toward eternal purposes. His patience literally saved a nation and preserved the messianic line. If you are in a season of waiting that seems endless, that is testing your faith and breaking your heart, I want you to do something powerful right now. In the comments below, write, "Lord, develop my character in this waiting." This is not just a comment. It is a declaration of surrender that God will honor. Our community will pray for you because you don't have to wait alone. If this word is bringing peace to your weary heart, leave a like and turn on the bell. This helps spread hope to other souls who are also learning to wait in God's timing. The word God has for your heart today is this: your waiting is not a waste of time. It is an investment in eternal character. He is developing qualities in you that will last forever and preparing you for blessings that will impact generations. Share this video with someone who needs to learn to wait with hope. Comment on which truth touched your soul the most today. And remember, God has the best for you at the perfect time. God bless you.